9 seconds on Bjergsen and double it. Svenskaren's up, and it looks like they have the damage. It's going to be Dardoch on the turret. Guard going down, Svenskaren very low. Stixay goes down as well. The 1-for-1 there. And here comes Doublelift out of the base. He finds a true arrow. Eagle Eye Doublelift dropping down Huhi, and TSM's going coast to coast for the win.
Hello everyone and welcome to NA LCS tonight. My name is Julian Pastry Tomka, and joining me for a co-host of this evening's show is Joe. That's Jat.
Hey Joe, how's it going?
Joshua, Jat, Lisa, and Sam Kobe Helmet.
Where'd Joe go?
It has been a long
Are there even
weekend.
other casters with a J to the start?
I feel like that was whoa, Jat's here? Oh, sick.
All right, we're going to right back and check out these standings. Had a few surprise results coming out of the throughout this weekend. Envy actually 2-0 along with Cloud9, but you can see CLG still sitting up there at the top. Team Dignitas, Envy, and Immortals all there in top 4. C9 moving up a few places, and then you can see FlatQuest, Liquid, and Phoenix 1 still sitting down the bottom.
Pastry Time, those standings are a mess. Like, what is actually happening right now? Like, parity is one thing, but that just seems like...
It's not parity not parity for Phoenix 1, Jat. Who's on par?
They don't turn around. They'll come back. They're third place team last split.
Well,
some games.
10th place team right now, unfortunately. Then let's have a recap though of our matches. Starting off with the big one, CLG versus TSM. We expected a lot from the rivalry, and this match delivered.
Definitely exciting. Always fun to see playmaking. I mean, all the guys really talked about in their interviews afterwards how important it is for these critical team fights, right? Rakan, Galio, there's all these different pieces that are coming through. Plus, obviously, we have this mid-lane counter to Galio coming out as the Fiora on
Drafting
Huhi.
that first game was super sick, by the way.
Definitely
also,
fun.
Zix finishing his conversation with his team like 3 hours before Parth did and waiting for him to come over. Then TSM destroyed in game 2. Like, Svenskaren, I was cashing on the other stream, so I only get to check the scoreboards a lot of the time when I come back to these. 13-0-12? What happened? He was feeding yesterday.
His kill participation was one of the most impressive things. Like, it was almost 100%, where nobody else on the team was really even close to that. He was actually creating all of this, action for the team. Felt like he really came to this series with something to prove.
And then, of course, the most dramatic ending maybe we've seen in a while at least, but certainly one worthy of CLG and TSM.
Kind of a classic COG-TSM game, right? Going the distance, third game was the closest. 10,000 gold throw. I don't know if that's normal, but it nearly happened.
Rush the Nexus now!
It didn't happen.
Almost tried. I mean, what do we think of the strength of these teams? Though CLG, I think we can safely say, still look good despite the loss there to TSM. TSM, though, I think it's kind of still up in the air. I mean, we've seen Sven play very well and then very not well. Even Doublelift kind of coming back into the team. He's not playing like his old self.
Yeah, and I also look at COG, right? They had that game against Echo Fox yesterday where they got a Baron steal at, 27 minutes, and that kind of got them back in the game to win. Otherwise, they would have been 0-2 this week. It's a topsy-turvy year so far for both of them. I mean, that changes. Both these teams would be 2-2. So I think no one looks solid. No one looks terrible either because they're having some signs of good play as well.
Can't really count on anything, so that makes the games exciting because there's a lot of unexpected stuff that comes up.
Well, we did hear from Doublelift at the end of the day, hearing about his interview. Let's hear what he had to say to TSM fans.
I mean, I don't really care if we do well or badly in the beginning of this play because we're still TSM, I'm really confident we're going to win the finals. I'm still going to be really, we're all going to be really good players towards the end of it, and we just had we had some issues for sure, and we're working on them extremely hard.
That's not the first time I've heard a player say we've got some issues, by the way. I think every team's kind of going through growing pains.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we knew as well, like, across the globe, right? We saw G2 losing to Fnatic. We saw TSM have a slow start. Like, the teams that played in MSI had such a fast turnaround before the start of the NALCS split.
Only one of our teams played in MSI, though, so we don't really know the excuses for everybody else.
Oh, yeah, that's what happened to Phoenix 1. I mean, they were so caught up in MSI. But really, this is the literal last day you could use that excuse, right? Once you're moving on at this point, you've had a lot of integration within the new patch and the new midseason. So.
And it's funny because we always do these interviews with the winning team, yet all of our interviews, it feels like everybody's been saying very similar stuff where everyone's like, oh, yeah, we barely won that game. We had this mistake, and yeah, the Baron, that was terrible. The improvements, everyone feels like they at least know where they need to focus for practice right now, but it was a very similar kind of feeling, I guess, for almost all of those.
Yeah, I mean, look at Saturday. All 4 series went 3 games. Today, I felt like half of them went 3 games, right? And then the one that didn't with C9 and Echo Fox, the first game was 65 minutes long. Like, these teams are really close right now.
I mean, we can talk about TSM still, though, because they did lose to Dignitas, which was kind of the surprise dig, spoiler. Did lose today, so it kind of feels like that team
to
also
Team
not
Liquid.
undefeated. Yeah,
What's happening?
But I mean, that was definitely an upset win there for Dignitas, 2-1 over TSM.
Yeah, and this was a huge win for Team Dignitas. Remember, Shrimp actually started for Chaser. We saw a couple of jungle subs coming in. He looked great. I mean, he made Sven look really bad in this series, winning almost every Smite fight and shutting him out of most games.
Yeah, I mean, Team Dignitas, that's why coming into today, their series versus Team Liquid, I mean, they even said it in their interview after the TSM upset. They're like, oh, wow. It was actually surprising we were able to pull it out in this series because we definitely thought this was going to be way more difficult. So tomorrow should be easy. Then they come in today, and it's so close. It's a very long stretch game versus Team Liquid. And a lot of the mistakes come through as far as the end game and shot calling and the initiation. So even though communication has been their #1 priority for practicing and improving in scrims, and it showed in this TSM game, still obviously everybody has gains to be made in those areas, as we saw today.
I feel like it is still pretty early in this bit, but we have one last match to talk about. It's actually Immortals versus Envy. Now, Immortals also looking amazing to start the week off, and they finally picked up a loss, this time to Envy, who actually 2-0'd them.
Yeah, and Pyrian, of all players as well, he was a Phoenix 1 sub that never got to see a starting game in the spring split, is doing great for Envy, and then suddenly the whole team seems to come together in late game. You think of Envy last split, they'd have 10 kills in the early game and then 20 deaths in the mid and late game. That's not the case for them. They're actually playing a lot slower. They're still getting some of the early game leads, and as a result, they're winning a lot more.
Exactly, and a lot of their early game leads, they've been rushing to Baron pretty quickly, like 22 to 25 minutes, so pretty early on the side of Barons, but that's been kind of one of their fixes for their mid and for their late game is they've just been pushing for objectives much quicker after they're winning these fights and after they're getting these early leads, and it's definitely a good look for them. You know, Pyrian in the mid lane is dying way less than Ninja did.
Yeah, and not now, Apollo, while he can still be one of the nicest guys in the LCS, is actually winning games and getting player of the game.
He's flashing on mid laners and solo killing them.
He played great.
He did. I mean, we can talk a little bit about kind of diversity moving forward for Envy, though. It does feel like they're slowly getting out of their play patterns, because for a while it felt like you could build an Envy comp, and that was the only thing they could play. And Niski's also somewhere at the end of the tunnel, potentially able to come in for the team and add a little bit more depth to that roster. So Envy, I think they've got a lot of room to grow as well.
I do as well. I think it would be foolish at this point to sub Niski in for Pyrian, even if that may have been their plan at the start of the year, just because Pyrian is playing so well, like until they start losing. But we've seen teams do that as well. Like Acadian was 2-0 in the first week, and they subbed him out. Even Chaser was looking good, and then they subbed him out and saw Shrimp doing well. So I actually think a lot of these teams are going to be doing more subbing throughout the rest of the split, because we're already seeing indications of that.
And I do like the trend that we've been seeing with Dignitas and with Echo Fox, where teams are using substitutes as competitive players, and they're like, we didn't draft substitutes, you know, only for emergency reasons, like, oh, he gets sick or he broke his finger. They want to actually be able to use all of their substitutes, you know, for a tactical advantage. Somebody gets, you know, tilted in one game, or, you know, there's a really stressful situation. It really does help to have someone at or very near the same level of play to be able to substitute in, you know, change up some of the components. Maybe they even have specific strategies. So all that type of stuff is really nice to see, the evolution of substitution.
Yeah, it just feels like there's a lot of great players in the NALCS, so let's talk about a few of them. It's time for the OP5. Going to start, as always, in the top lane. I mean, we can talk endlessly about it, I think, at this point. I mean, we can talk about Sunday and Shrimp, actually, because two Team Dig members making it this week.
Someday is showing up in a huge way, and we overhyped Team Dignitas a little bit after 1 week last year. They were 1-1. We're like, they're a top team now, and then they lost about 100 in a row. But here, they actually look a little bit better, and Shrimp was a big part of that. He actually got subbed out towards the very final game, and they brought in Chase and still lost. Both those guys were super on point all week.
Yeah, I think Someday specifically looks super duper good. When we were deciding these OP5s, the first one was immediately Someday, no question for other top laners. Like some of the other ones we have honorable mentions and whatnot, but he's absolutely hard carrying on split push champions. And then he's also able to play initiation for the team. So he's still that diverse guy that we know from Spring Split, who was great on Maokai and could play frontline super well, and playing the carries. The other thing is that even in the games that they lose, he's making intelligent decisions. There were multiple times times today where his entire team dies, and he's not sacrificing going to throw his own life in there away for no reason, right? He makes the calculated cutoff to plays, basically.
Yeah, and I do want to shout out Smoothie as well, who is the support OP5 in this one. Him and Jensen both had good weeks, but Smoothie in particular, I remember we got to do the alt stream with him during playoffs at some time, and he was kind of asking me, like, what would a support have to do to win MVP of the split? Because he really thinks he's playing at a super high level, and you're just not getting that because all he was doing was playing Karma and Lulu last split. Now that we got Bard and Thresh and all this other stuff coming in here, he's actually making a lot more plays. So if C9 can find a lot of success, I mean, that's where Smoothie's goals are. And in the current meta, if they don't change Door and Shield, and if we keep seeing these playmaking supports, he's got a chance. I
mean, one last little shout out, of course. We have to talk about nice guy Apollo, because, I mean, as far as players on Envy that are overperforming, we talked about Lyra last split, making the all-team in Spring, but, I mean, Apollo's play's just been great. Sure, it maybe feels kind of limited, but his Caitlyn...
No! Stop saying that! Every time we compliment him, you're like, yeah, but a little limited, a little, you know, consistent.
He did nothing limited.
He was flashing on Pope out there and solo killing him. And I was like, yes, Apollo. Yeah. He's actually, like...
late game carries as well. We're seeing a lot of Caitlyn, the double Energizer build with Warlord's Bloodlust, where you got Static Shift, Rapid Fire Cannon, and Warlord's Bloodlust. Your first shot's like 800 range away, and then you zoom towards him to finish him off. Like, the late game carry with that, we saw Piglet do it, but Apollo did it better. I mean, he was the sole reason.
Piglet copied Apollo.
yeah, Piglet had some pretty bad builds this week as well, but Apollo had the right builds in most situations and did a really good job.
Do we start docking players for just playing Karma Caitlyn in lanes nowadays, though? A little bit, at least style points. I'll dock some style points.
It's not as stylish as
He can make up for those by flashing on solo laners, though, and killing them.
Well, we've had a lot of fun in the NALCS this week, but we are going to talk about some of our favorite NALCS rivalries and why. We had some great tweets out there, so thank you guys. We'll start with @Draken, @Dr4chan. Any of the clashes between TSM, CLG, and C9, really. The three powerhouses of the region are always fun, and TSM vs IMT was fun in 2016 as well.
Yeah, specifically when CLG plays C9. I don't know if there's bad blood between those teams, but those actually always seem like some of the most entertaining games we're going to get to see. CLG always forcing the issue, and it just feels like C9 responds in like the most chaotic ways. We had the great CLG TSM Classic matchup, but CLG C9 is always good. I can't wait for that one again.
Yeah, that's always funny because I'm always like, oh, you know what? The CLG TSM ones and the TSM Cloud9, like whichever ones are involving TSM, since they're so used to being that #1 spot, it feels like the other two are kind of battling to be the rival of TSM.
It just alternates who's playing.
Cloud9 were like, oh, we're the rival, and then this year Dark's like, oh, we're definitely the rival. You know, we're the top two teams. It's always fun to watch those three because they're also the most popular teams, and they're always jockeying for position in #1, 2, and 3. Do we live in a world where TSM actually gets shoved out, though, and we have a finals without TSM, a finals with just...
It has never happened
exactly.
in the history of the NALCS.
TSM have been every single one.
All right, moving on to our next rivalry from Simon @BaseDesire says, my favorite rivalry is Dignitas versus Baron. It is very back and forth, and Dignitas seem to be finally...
I knew he'd get some mean answers.
I agree with.
We're going to get one of those. Dignitas is winning this rivalry so far in the split, to be fair.
Yeah, this split for sure. They're blasting Baron.
I mean, like, we can talk a little bit about that. All memes aside, like, Dignitas' macro play has seemed so clean. You mentioned Sunday, and his timing and how calculated he's been, and when he does arrive to different situations has been good, but that has translated to full map advantages for Dignitas as well. I mean, every macro play seems really well disciplined.
Yeah, I do wonder how they're going to bounce back as well, because everyone just kind of chalked them in at 4-0, and then they lost to Team Liquid today, which is going to raise some pretty big questions in the Team Dignitas camp.
Rub away your chalk mark there.
No longer 4-0, 3-1. No one can be undefeated this year already.
Well, it seems rough there. Our last rivalry, though, a tweet here from Keegan @SpudMcKeegan. Favorite rivalry is Freak's Puns versus Kobe's Patience. One of my favorite rivalries.
Who's winning right now?
The Freak is almost always winning that one. The Patience is wearing thin.
Well, that would mean...
I guess I'm still holding up, so he hasn't won yet. So
he's still alive.
You know what? You forget Freak. I'm winning. I'm definitely winning that.
Is clearly winning.
I'm crushing it.
Are you crushing it? What's it going to take?
I'm not insane yet.
What's it going to take to break it down? I mean, maybe. You know what? Maybe Freak's already won. We maybe never know. Well, that's it for us here at NALCS tonight. It's been so much fun again. Join us next week for more NA action. But for now, good night.